Alright guys, so today we are going to be designing a wrench and a nut. I have it here in Tinkercad, one already modeled. So to start off, we probably want to look at some reference images of what we're going to be designing. So I pulled some up here, and as you can see, we kind of have a better idea of what we're going to be designing and the shapes that we can use to design it. So to start off, we're going to want to log on to Tinkercad, so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to go to Tinkercad. And I'm going to click on Create New Design. And that'll bring us into our work environment. And now we can see our work plane and a bunch of the different settings. So if you're new to Tinkercad, on the left here we can see our little box, and that's going to help us rotate around and look at our different views. So if I click on front, I can see my front view. If I click on left, I can see my left view. And if I click on top, I can see my top view. Also on the left here we have a bunch of different settings, but we're not going to mess too much with those. The only one we are going to change is this one here at the bottom, and that's going to switch our view to a flat view or an orthographic view. So I'm going to click on that, and now I can see my view is flat, and that's just going to help us model a little better and easier. So what we're also going to change is our units. So if you guys look at the bottom right, it says Edit Grid, and if I click on Edit Grid, I can now change my units from millimeters to inches. So if I click on the little drop down, I can click inches, and then I'm going to click Update Grid. So now my grid is in inches. So now I'm going to go back and look at my wrench and nut to see what we can start off with. So the first thing that pops out to me is the little rectangle here, the arm basically of the wrench. And I'm going to start off by modeling that. So I'm going to first click Top, so I can see only the top, so my top view. I'm going to bring out a box. So now I brought out my box. I can zoom in a little bit. I'm going to change the dimensions of my box. So if I click one of the little vertices on the edges, so one of the little white dots, it can show me my different units. And it's going to show me the dimensions, so 1 inch for the width and 1 inch for the length. And I'm going to change those. So for my length, we want it to be 0.375 inches. So 0.375, and that's 3/8 if you're thinking of it as a fraction, and I'm going to click Enter. Next, for my length, I want my length to be 3 inches. So I'm going to type in 3, and I'm going to click Enter. So now we have that kind of arm. And what we're also going to change is our height. Because right now this is kind of tall. If you look at here, it's not that tall, it's pretty thin. So I'm going to change my height to 0.125, which is 1/8 if you're thinking of it as a fraction. I'm going to click Enter, and it even shows us the little fraction here. Alright, so now we have our arm, and that was pretty easy. Now we're going to go into the little cylinders at the edges here, and the actual part of the wrench that tightens a nut. So to make that, we're going to bring out a cylinder. So if you guys look at the right here, we're going to bring out a cylinder. And we're going to change the units of our cylinder. So we're going to change the dimensions to 0.75, and the other one is also going to be 0.75. We're going to click Enter. So now it's 3/4 by 3/4, or 0.75 by 0.75 for the width and the length. So it has a diameter of 0.75. Alright, so now what we want to do is we want to center this to the rectangle. And actually, before we do that, we should also change the height of our cylinder. So I want my cylinder to be 1/4 inch tall. So I'm going to click on height, so the little point at the top, and I'm going to type in 0.25. So that's 1/4. I'm going to press Enter. So now it's 1/4 inch tall. And we can also, on the right here, change some of our settings. So if you guys can see, there's a couple lines on our cylinder. To make it more smooth, I'm going to just turn my sides all the way up on the right, and my segments also all the way up. And that just makes it look a little more smooth. Alright, so now we want to kind of center this to our rectangle. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select both of our objects like that. And then I'm going to go up, and I'm going to click on the two little bars here. This is called the Align tool, and it basically brings two objects to each other at certain points. So if I click on my top view again, now I click Align, and I can see all the dots around our objects. So I'm going to click on the rectangle actually again, and now it's going to only show the dots around the rectangle. And that's just making sure that I bring the circle to the rectangle and I'm not moving both of them. So the rectangle is going to stay stationary. All right, so now I want to center my circle to the rectangle. So I'm going to click on the point here at the right. So this one that's in the center. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to center it here. So I'm going to click on this point here at the edge of the rectangle. And I also want to center it from the height. So I'm going to move to more of a front view, and I'm going to click this middle dot here. And now it's centered on all three axes, so X, Y, and Z. And now we want to move it a little further out, since we can still kind of see our rectangle. So to do that, I'm going to click on my circle, and I'm going to move it. And it shows me two little boxes here, and I'm going to type in on both of them. So this one, the one that has the arrow pointing upward, I'm going to just make sure that's 0, because we don't want to move it. We don't want to move it up or down. We only want to move it sideways. And this one here, it says minus 0.5, and I think that's good. So I'm going to keep it minus 0.5, and I'm going to press enter. So now I've moved my cylinder. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another cylinder. So I'm going to bring out another cylinder here on the right. And this time, this cylinder is going to be 1 inch by 1 inch for the length and the width. So we don't need to change that. What we do need to change is the height. And we're going to keep the same height as the other cylinder. So I'm going to click on the little dot at the top to change the height. And that's going to be 0.25 as well, so 1/4. If we also want to make this look a lot smoother than it is, I'm going to go to the right and turn the sides all the way up and turn segments all the way up as well, so that it looks smooth. The next thing we're going to do is we're also going to align this to our rectangle. So I'm going to select both the rectangle and the cylinder. Notice how I did not select the cylinder that we have already aligned. Then I'm going to click Align, or you can press L on your keyboard. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the rectangle again. That way the dots are only around the rectangle. And then I'm going to center it towards the rectangle. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the middle dot here. And then I'm going to click this dot here at the edge. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to center it from the height. So I'm going to move to my front view, and I'm going to click on this middle dot. And that's going to center it on all three axes as well. So now I can move it further out. And so to do that, I'm going to just click on my cylinder, and I'm going to move it. And I'm going to keep this number 0 because we don't want to move it up or down. We only want to move it sideways. And so this number, it says 0.5, and I think 0.5 is a great number. So I'm going to just click enter. That looks good. So I think we have our basic shape for our wrench. So now we could combine it, but I want to kind of do a couple more modifications before we do that. So I'm going to click back on my top view. I'm going to go all the way down on my right, and I'm going to go to the shape called Polygon, and that's just a multiple side shape. So now I brought out my polygon, and I'm going to keep it 6 sides, since that's the side of most nuts, and I'm going to change some of my dimensions. So for the polygon, I think I'm going to keep it 0.25 by 0.25. So 0.25 for the length and 0.25 for the width. All right. Next, I'm going to click back on my polygon, and I'm going to make it a hole. So on the right here, I'm going to click hole. Then I'm going to hold my polygon and hold the shift key, and then hold my cylinder here on the left. And that's just going to select both of them. You can also try to select both of them, but you might accidentally select the rectangle. So I'd rather hold shift and select both. All right, so then I'm going to center my polygon to my cylinder. So I'm going to click align, or you can press L. I'm going to click align at the top, and then I'm going to click on my cylinder again. So now I'm going to center it to the middle. So I'm going to click the middle dot, and I'm going to center it to the middle on the width as well. So I'm going to click that middle dot. And now it's centered. And if you wanted to make your little polygon here bigger, you can. So if you wanted to make it bigger, I would just move that out and then change it. And this is optional. But if you wanted to make it bigger, like 0.375 maybe, and then 0.375, you can also do that as well. And you would just do the same steps, and you would hold shift, hold both of them, and align them to the middle. Oh, remember to, when you click align, remember to click cylinder again. Align it to the middle on the width and align it to the middle on the length. And now I have that there. So now the next thing that we want to do is actually make the hole for our little wrench to fit in. So this little kind of U shape. So what I'm going to do to make that is I'm going to first bring out a round roof. And if you guys go to your right on shapes, it's all the way down. It's called a round roof, and it's this little blue color. So I'm going to bring out my round roof, and we're going to first rotate it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my left view. It might be a different view for you, but I'm going to just look at the side, and I'm going to click on this little, it's kind of a curved arrow, and that's going to help us rotate. So if I move a little up, it's going to bring out this dialog box with a 0, and we want to rotate ours 90 degrees. So I'm going to type in 90 and press enter. Alright, so now we have that brought out, and I'm going to click on my top view and change some of the dimensions of our round roof. So I'm going to change the width of our round roof, and the width is right now 1 inch, so I'm going to change the width to 0.5, so half an inch. I'm also going to change my length, and my length right now is 0.5, so half an inch. I'm going to change it to 0.25, so a quarter of an inch. And I like that. So the next thing we can do is we can bring out a box. So I'm going to bring out my box. I'm going to make it near our little round roof here. So I'm going to change the width and the length of my box. So for the width, I'm going to change my width to the same as my round roof. So it's going to be 0.5, so half an inch. And for my length, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make it, let's try 1.5 inches. All right, so now that we have both of those, now we can align our round roof and our rectangle. So I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to click align here at the top, and then I can click on my rectangle again, so the dots are only around the rectangle, and then I'll click on the middle here, and it looks like our round roof disappeared. So it basically just went into the shape. And so now that we have that aligned, we're going to move our round roof. And it actually might be easier to move our rectangle. So to do that, I'm going to go on the top, and I'm going to click the rectangle, and I'm going to just move it out a little bit, and then I can type in my numbers. So to move it down, we want to move it a quarter of an inch, and it actually already wrote that for us, but I'm just going to type it in, 0.25, and we're not going to move it left or right. So I'm going to just keep this one 0. So now that is aligned to our round roof, like that. And if yours is not aligned on the center, all you have to do is select both of these, click align, and then just click on the center. So like that, and then it aligns it on the height. All right, next we're going to use a tool called group, and that's just going to combine both of our objects. So I'm going to select both of our objects here and go at the top, and I'm going to click on the little square and circle merged kind of shape. And I'm going to press that, and it's going to group our two objects. Alright, so now we have that, and now we can put it into our wrench and create that kind of U shaped. So I'm just going to move my wrench with my mouse just to kind of see how we want to do it. And this part doesn't have any real necessary units. This is all based on how you want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just rotate my my little shape here. So I'm going to type in 22. So let's try 22.5. And this might be a negative number, I'm not sure. All right, so 22.5 worked. So I kind of like that angle. And I'm going to move it in my shape to kind of just try to fit it as best as I can. And if you kind of see that it's snapping a little too much, what you can do is you can change your snap settings. So if you guys go to the bottom where it says snap grid, if I click on that arrow, I can click off. So now if I turn my snap grid off, I can move this as freely as I want. And that's kind of what I want. So I'm going to move it around there. That looks good. All right. And what we're going to do last is we're going to click on this and we're going to make it a hole. so that it can cut through our objects. Now we have 2 holes and 3 solid objects. And now if we can combine these, it's going to make our wrench. So I'm going to just highlight everything. Just going to select everything. And if I go up to the top, if I click group, now we can see our wrench and it's red. But if we wanted to change our wrench, the color of our wrench, we could just go to solid and then click on the color that we want. So I want mine to be gray. Now we have our wrench. Alright, so that looks good. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to make our bolt. So to make our bolt, I'm going to first bring out a little object called a torus. So if you guys go down, I'm going to bring a torus. Alright, so now we have our torus out, and let's change some of the dimensions. So for the width, I'm going to keep my torus, let's try 0.375 for the width, and 0.375 for the length. So 3/8. You might have to zoom in, it's kind of small. But what we can also do is we can change the tube. So if you guys go to the right, when you click the torus, it has an option for tube. And so right now it's 0.12, but if you wanted to make it a little thinner, you can type in 0.06, which is what I'm going to use. So I'm going to click enter, and it makes it really thin. So I kind of like that. Alright. So if I look at my torus from the front, I'm going to change the height as well. So right now it is 0.12 inches tall. So I'm going to change it to 0.06 inches tall. Alright, I think that looks good. So next we're going to make 3 of these actually. So we've already made 1, we're going to add 2 more. So I'm going to click on my torus and I'm going to press Control D. And what that's going to do is it's going to duplicate. What you can also do is click here at the top left and click on this one that says duplicate. So the one that has, it looks like a bunch of different pages. So if you click on that, it'll duplicate your object. And then you can bring this arrow and pull your object up. So my grid is still off, so it's moving very freely, but if I go back, I'm just gonna move it up and I'm gonna type in my box. So I'm gonna type in 0.06 and click enter. Alright, so I'm gonna click on my torus here at the top again, and I'm gonna press duplicate here at the top again, and then I'll move it up and type in my box 0.06. Alright, so now I have the shape of our threads for the nut, and now we have to make our actual nut. So we've done the threads, so let's make the polygon body. So if you guys look at the right here, I'm going to go all the way down to polygon, and we're going to bring out another polygon. And we're going to make this polygon, let's try 0.75 for the polygon. So for the width, we're going to type in 0.75. And for the length, we're going to type in also 0.75. And if you want to make this smaller, you can. I'm going to just keep it like that. So what we want to do next is we want to make a hole. So if you guys go all the way up to cylinder, I'm going to bring out a cylinder. And the dimensions of my cylinder is going to be slightly smaller than the diameter of my torus. So my torus is, let's see, 0.326. So let's make ours maybe like 0.3. So for the length and the width, I'm going to type in 0.3. So 0.3 for length, 0.3 for width. Alright, then I'm going to make this a hole so it can go through our object. And now I'm going to select both my circle and my polygon, and then I'll click the align tool here at the top, or press L. Now I'm going to just click on my polygon again and click on the middle 2 dots. So this dot and then this dot. So now it's completely in the center. And now I'll just select both of our polygon and our circle, and then I'll go up to the top here and click group. And now it groups those 2 objects. And if you find that your circle or your polygon might be a little too wide on one side, you can always go back and change that by just clicking ungroup. So if I wanted to ungroup, and you don't have to do this, but if I can click the polygon and go up here and click ungroup. And now I'm free to change the width of my polygon if I wanted to. So if you wanted to change it maybe to like 0.7, let's try 0.7, you could change it to 0.7 to give it a better look. And then you would just do the exact same thing by selecting both the polygon and the circle, clicking align, and aligning it to both the length and the width. And the circle should turn gray once you do that. Alright, so now I can select both of them again and click group so it makes the whole. I think that looks good. So now I'm going to copy, actually no, I'm going to group my toruses here at the left. So I'm just going to select all of the toruses and I'm going to click group. So now it makes this one solid object and we can see the height of our torus. So our torus is 0.18, so we're going to make it slightly smaller than that. So we're going to make it 0.15. So for the height of my polygon, I'm going to make it 0.15. And click enter. Alright, next I'm just going to select both my polygon and my torus like that. I'm going to click align. Then I'm going to click on my torus again. And then I'm going to align it to the center, so this middle dot, and then to the center on the width, so this middle dot, and then also to the center of the height. So I'm going to click on this middle dot. So that's centered on all three axes. Alright, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to combine these two shapes. So I'm just going to select both of these and click combine or group here at the top. And that kind of makes it one object. And again, we can change our color by clicking on solid and then clicking the color that we want. So I want mine to be gray as well. Alright, next we want to get rid of this little layer that we have here at the top. So to do that, I'm going to click work plane and then click on the top of my nut. Then I'll bring out a box just like that. And I just want to make sure that it covers the entire surface of our little nut. And that'll be fine. And so what I'll do next is I'll just select both our nut and our box and I'll click group here at the top. Alright, that looks good. So I'm going to click work plane again. This time I'll rotate all the way down to the bottom and I'm going to click it and click on the surface of my nut. So the bottom surface this time. And then I'll do the exact same thing. So I'll bring out a box. So it's covering the entire area of the nut. Then I'll just select both of these and click group. Alright, so that looks good. Now I'm going to click on work plane and I'm going to click anywhere on my work plane and it should bring me back to my view. So now we have a nut and we have a wrench. And that all looks good. And if you guys wanted to make this smaller, all you got to do is just click on the nut and just scale it down like that, just grabbing one of the edges if you wanted to make it look more realistic to the wrench. And that's basically it. Now you got a little nut and you got a wrench.